Hello crew, welcome to Cook With Me Live tonight. Oh my gosh, this is another recipe that I cannot wait to show you with a bit of a funky name, I know. So tonight we're making canoodles and cubes. I thought it was kind of cute, but basically it kind of stands for carrot noodles, but we're also going to use black bean noodles. I want to show you some a whole new type of food that's also a whole food that hopefully can expand your repertoire when it comes to food. So I have a few little tips and tricks that I want to incorporate into tonight, specifically to show you how to pull together this type of a meal, because many of you are probably already doing stir fries and the like. Okay, so I'm curious to hear from you guys as you're logging in. How often in a week or in a month are you making a stir fry, some version of that, whether it's, with noodles or just veggies and meat? How often are you finding yourselves doing that style of meal? And the other question I'd love to hear from you on is, are you making your own sauces for this? Now, if you've answered no to that, then definitely this is going to be an important video for you. We're only going to be covering one version of a sauce tonight, but the principles within this, I just hope that you can see how easy it is to create your own massive amount of flavor without all the additives and preservatives and added sugars and dodgy salts that they're going to be adding into a packaged form, whether it's in a jar, whether it's in a bottle, whether it's in a packet. We can do better at home and it can be fairly easy. So that's kind of what I wanted to show you tonight, is how do we create a yummy, flavorful sauce. We're also going to be crumbing some tofu cubes. Now, tofu is a bit of a treat for me. I don't try to eat it all the time, but if you are going to have it, please get organic tofu wherever possible. It's very important when it comes to soy products to go organic. So we're going to be having some of that tonight. And then, like I said, the new noodles. So maybe some of you have never had the black bean or the mung bean style fettuccine noodles. They're delicious. Absolutely love them. Okay, and they're a little bit, they're quite a bit less guilty, I guess. Some people feel guilty for eating noodles nowadays, so these are much less guilty. All right, so let's get into it. Very warm welcome to Cheryl and Jessica, who are on straight away. Thank you so much. Are you guys cooking tonight? Are you just watching? I'd happy to hear, I guess, how you guys are going to be doing this tonight. Cheryl, I think you are cooking, and Glenda's on. Hello, Glenda. Welcome. Okay, guys, we're going to get straight in. This one is going to take, it's got a few more moving parts, but I do want to show you how quick and easy it can come together, even though it looks like there's a lot of ingredients there. So the first thing we're going to start out with is the sauce. And basically this is because the sauce, we want it to be nice and ready to go, so that when we cook our vegetables, we're not then having to let them go cool or overcooked while we make the sauce. So the sauce is going to come first, then we're going to do the cubes, then we're going to finalize it with the veggies and the noodles. You ready? Here we go. Okay, so to make a sauce yourself, I would recommend you starting with some form of bullet style blender. Now, the reason for this is because it's so easy, and generally speaking, these come with a lid that you can then store it in the fridge as is, or you can transfer it into a jar and still have that available. So having one of these things on hand, you do not have to invest a lot of money whatsoever, but I use this all the time for sauces and dressings, right? So if you've got a simple little device like that, then I'd pull that one out now. Otherwise, any blender, any food processor, even a jar will do. It just means you have to do a little bit more work yourself to crush the garlic and I guess make sure that everything gets all blended up nicely. So that's up to you. I will leave that one as your choice. So with this recipe, with the sauce, we kind of want to, again, like you hear me say a lot, let the machine do the work. So we are going to be putting garlic in here, a fair amount of garlic, all right? I've said about 5 cloves worth. Now, if you're using a beautiful kind of organic garlic mince already, then this is going to be even quicker for you still. But I'm just going to grab a couple of cloves. I could grab even a couple more to get up to that garlic amount that we're looking for. Up to you, okay? Keeping in mind that unless you are doing a strict FODMAPs diet for gut reasons, then I would encourage you to have as much garlic as you can to kind of help boost that immune system every opportunity that you get. So if you haven't, I guess, found the fast way to cut garlic yet, we just take the very tip and tail off. We don't need to waste any more precious garlic than we absolutely need to, especially at how costly it can get. So just take the tip and the tail off, and then we're going to crush it before we peel it so that it's a lot easier to do. So we're going to crush each one of those garlic cloves with the base of the knife is usually the easiest way to do it. And then they should peel up pretty simply. Okay, so straight into the blender. Like I said, we're going to let the machine do all the blending for us. No need to kind of chop this down any further. If they're a little bit finicky still. We probably haven't crushed them enough. And Jackie, welcome. Looking back to my normal self, thank you, Jackie. It has been a 3-week recovery so far. I am feeling a lot better, but there's still a ways to go. So thank you, Jackie. I appreciate that. It's funny too what a little bit of makeup can do for scars. So all good. We will get there in the end. Funny you say that, actually, Jackie. I went and had a physio appointment the other day and found this very interesting. Did you guys know that the average human mouth, from tip to tooth, and as far as the opening goes, the average opening is about 45 millimeters, between 45 and 47 millimeters. And so it's very interesting to observe that because of still my jaw issues that are going on, I only have 27 mils of an opening. So I'm still kind of in the habit, if I'm not really being present with my meal, I go to take my normal size bite of food and it gets stuck because there's nowhere for it to go, so it just spills off the fork. So I'm still getting used to my injury as well, Jackie, but I just found that very interesting that our mouths are supposed to open about 45 mils between teeth. So yeah, anyways, a little bit of trivia for you tonight, useless trivia. Okay, we've got the garlic in. Lemon or lime juice, up to you. You could do a combination. So whatever you have on hand, it should taste delicious. And then if you want to get fancy for another, I guess, another evening or another time you make this, then you can aim to use the opposite one. So I'm not even sure. I think this one's a lemon. It's definitely in between. So we're aiming for about 1/3 cup of lemon or lime juice. Now this is going to make enough sauce for the 5 to 6 servings, but I'll give you a little trick here. So if you need to stretch a sauce further, as in you need it to last for more meals, I guess, and you need to get more out of it, rather than necessarily, it doesn't always work, but you don't always have to just double the amounts. For example, you could just focus on putting more of the strong ingredients in instead to make it more concentrated of a sauce, which would mean physically you would put less volume on, but you would still get the same flavor effects. So that's a little bit of a trick. Now, in the case of this sauce, most of those ingredients are going to be key flavor ingredients. So, you know, it's a little bit up to you how you want to tweak and change that. If you know that your palate likes the sauce to be a little bit more sour, you'd be putting in more lemon or lime juice, right? If you like it a little bit more sweet, you'd be putting in the extra honey. What we're trying to do with this sauce is target as many areas of your tongue as we can, so there's a better likelihood that people will enjoy it when they bite into it. Okay, so I've got about 1/3 actually within that one very juicy lemon. So we're going to put that approximately 1/3 cup of lemon or lime juice into there, and really straightforward, all the other ingredients. However, you have the choice if you want to actually blend up your green onions or not. So I've said about 1/2 cup of green onions. Okay, by green onions, I mean the other word for that in Australia, I believe, is shallots. Technically speaking, they're different, but that's all right, we'll go with that. Okay, so remember the trick, if you haven't seen this already, whenever we have something long and skinny, we can halve our chopping time by having the vegetable first and then stacking it on top of each other. Okay, so then when we cut it, we're only having to do half the amount of work. So your choice here, if you want to be able to put the shallots in and blend them into the sauce, that's absolutely fine. Otherwise, you could keep these shallots to sprinkle on top of the meal, or even steam them along with the vegetables if you would prefer them to be a little bit milder. Okay, so just going to get through these. Approximately 1/2 cup. There we go. And keep in mind, these little stubby ends can be put into your freezer bag for accumulating the ingredients for a stock later on, so homemade broth or stock. As long as there's no dirt in them, they're absolutely a great addition to your homemade broth and stock. Okay, so I guess just because we can tonight, I'm going to put maybe some of the greener ends into the sauce, because the greener ends tend to be a little bit less punchy, a little bit less pungent, I guess is the word that I'm looking for. And then these kind of more towards the white end ones, we can actually add them into the steamer with the veggies later. So we'll put them aside on our nice big cutting board. And then next up, we've got some tamari, which is also called soy sauce, but this is the traditional version. And you might think it's a lot to say a third of a cup, but keep in mind that we're making a fair bit of sauce here, and it is going to go sort of over the 5 to 6 different serves. So we do want about the third of a cup of tamari. Okay, and ideally you are getting a tamari that is naturally brewed. Generally speaking, the word tamari should only be used for something that is naturally brewed. However, there are some companies that are ruining it for everyone. So you still have to look at and read the labels. Okay? And this is, I think, why people struggle so much when it comes to making flavor. So the main question that I get all the time is, my food just doesn't taste good. It's not flavorful, it's bland, or it's boring, or hubby says it's bland and boring. And I think it's because people just have maybe never been taught how to actually develop flavor. And it might surprise you how many and how much volume of the aromatics that we need to create those flavors that you're used to getting from more of the restaurants, the cafes, or the packaged goods. So it might surprise you that it's going to take 5 cloves of garlic to really achieve this. But there you go. Now you're starting to learn the basics of creating a sauce. And it does take, in some cases, volume. Okay, so we've taken care of the pungency of the sauce. We've taken care of the sourness of the sauce, the saltiness of the sauce. Now we get to add some sweet. So hopefully you've got a good quality honey. You can start with about 2 to 3 tablespoons. Obviously, if you've started adjusting your sweetness palette, you may start with less, okay? So you might just do the 2, knowing that you could always technically add that in after if you wished. And because honey doesn't all flow out of this tablespoon, I'm going to add just a little bit extra there. So that was probably only about 2.5 tablespoons, just because we get the residual on there. Okay, so I'm going to get all of that into the sauce. And now we're going to add a couple of different oils. So I want to tell you the difference between these ones and the reason why we're using the 2 different ones. You don't have to use the 2 different oils. The main reason I'm putting them in there is because I wanted to show you the difference between natural sesame oil and toasted sesame oil. So toasted sesame oil normally comes in a much smaller bottle because it's very strong. It's very noticeably sesame. Some people even will open that and go, oh, that's an off oil, but it's not. It's actually just the toasted sesame. So you can smell them both. This is a natural sesame, as in it hasn't been toasted, okay? And there's no smell to that at all. It's just oil, essentially. So you do have a very big difference. So this one we're only going to use 2 teaspoons of, whereas this one we could use 2 tablespoons of, or more. This can be a base oil in a lot of your salad dressings as well. Okay, so that's just the difference there. If you're not a huge fan of the sesame flavor, then probably omit this guy. Okay, I absolutely love it, so I probably could even go 2 or 3, but as you can see, I've used a lot of it and I'm nearly running out. So that's all I'm probably gonna get tonight. There we go, that's all we get tonight. So the recipe is just a guide. Have to get some more of that one. Okay, and then our natural sesame oil, this is partially to give us a bit more distance with the sauce so that it can go over the food better, and it's partially just to carry the flavors that we have established. Okay, so as you probably know, oil doesn't contribute flavor, it carries the flavors that are already in the sauce. How's everyone going? Are we caught up? You guys cooking, just watching? All right, so we've got our toasted sesame oil, our regular oil. Now, last but not least, we can add some salt, okay? And you might think, oh, well, we added a third of a cup of tamari, you're probably not gonna need salt. You'd be surprised. And I say that only because think about the volume of food that this is going to get poured over, and by the time we do that, it's going to feel and taste a little bit more diluted. So you can wait, you can add the salt after, or if you are having fish sauce, then that's something that would be a delicious addition to this as well. So in the case of fish sauce, you might be adding a tablespoon, maybe a tablespoon and a half, depends on your tastes. So I'll let you decide whether you want to go the salt or the fish sauce. I'm going to add just a little bit of salt for now, probably a bit more later. Last time I did this, I think I needed a full teaspoon. So I'm going to start with half a teaspoon, just kind of knowing that this spoon is not a perfect measure. Okay. And we got to blend it up. All right. So that's pretty quick and easy on the machine, a couple of seconds, till we get a nice cohesive blended sauce. Sorry for the noise. And we want to shake down that honey. See how we've got all the honey sitting at the bottom? It's kind of showing its legs. So we want to get all that honey into the sauce so we don't end up with a honey pot at the end. And you might need to actually take the spatula out and give that a go with the spatula. There we go. Okay, so this is our sauce, pretty much done. I mean, you can have a taste of it, but so what we're aiming for here is enough punch that it's going to carry through the entire dish. And this is the thing that you just have to practice in your cooking and just be confident to give it a shot, okay? So we want it to taste, when we taste it on its own, we want it to taste really punchy, as in really strong. It's gotta hit your tongue in all areas. So you gotta get the sweet, the sour, the salty, kind of that balance between, that's what we're after here. The other thing I love adding to this is chili. I would be adding a ton of that if it was just myself eating it tonight, but I'm gonna leave the chili for my own dish after. So that's another addition you can add. And if you still need it to go further, okay, like I said, you are gonna have to probably add more of the flavorful ingredients, but you can just be adding a non-dairy milk or water. Water is obviously gonna dilute it the most, or just extra ingredients to make it go further. If we wanna thicken it, you've got kind of two options. Depending on whether or not you're going to serve this hot, okay? If you're going to serve it hot, you need to shake up in a separate jar, and I believe this is all detailed in the notes, okay? So you're going to shake up in a separate jar about 1 teaspoon of tapioca starch with a couple of tablespoons of water. Give it a good shake to form a slurry. And then when you've got this in a saucepan on the stove and it's near to a boil, then you'd be slowly pouring in that tapioca mixture until it thickens and then taking it off the heat. I quite like it just as is, and I actually don't mind the garlic raw. So I normally just pour this over the nice hot noodles and veggies and it's all good. Completely up to you, that's your choice. So yeah, so decide if you think that that's got enough punchiness to carry through the rest of the dish. I think we're good. Like I said, I'm still wanting that heat, but that's all right. So that's our sauce. We're gonna leave it at that. Like I said, if you need to make some adjustments, make that now. Otherwise, we're gonna move on to getting the tofu cubes ready. All right, sauce is ready to go. And if you are going to be practicing how to do this meal kind of in real life when you're not talking someone through it, what I would be doing right now is getting the water boiling for the noodles at the same time. So that's maybe an option for you if you're kind of speeding along through this. You know what, I might just start that now, just so that we're all set to go. Let that happen here. Okay, and if you haven't already got out your saucepan, we'd look to get a saucepan that you've also got the steamer basket for as well, if you can. If not, we can cook the veggies in the frying pan after we're done with the cubes. You have options. There we go. Okay, now the tofu cubes. This is probably a skill that you could apply to many different instances, many different dishes, okay? So essentially what we're gonna be doing here is crumbing some tofu, which is, like I said, not too different to crumbing chicken or crumbing fish, whatever else you like to have. Now I have a little bit less here than what I've called for in the recipe, simply because we were trying a new version. This is actually a smoked tofu, so I'm really interested to see how that's gonna taste, okay? And I'm gonna look, probably with this shape, we could probably go half, or maybe we'll go thirds for cube size. Now that's up to you. It depends how much crumbing you want. So the more surface area that we create with these cubes, then obviously the more kind of crumb texture you're gonna get. Okay, so I think we'll go halves and halves again. And then we'll go smaller in this direction so we can hopefully get a few more in. Okay, so we just kind of want that size of a cube, roughly thereabouts, and then we're going to crumb them up and get them cooking. Okay, now the easiest way to do this is going to be in a nice big bowl. So get yourself your biggest bowl that you have, because we're going to do some tossing. It's a bit of a magic trick, not really. It's fun though, until they go all over the kitchen, so I'll show you how to do it. Now, to crumb it, the important thing here, we don't need to get complicated. It's amazing how easily humans can complicate things. So I'm not going to tell you to dab these dry. I'm not going to tell you to pre-marinate them. We're going to make it the easy version because that's what I'm all about. So they've got their little bit of moisture from the package now, which is perfect. Okay, so what we want to do for this is we want to add in the dried powdered spices with a little bit of tapioca starch and a little bit of a drying flour, such as rice flour or sorghum flour. You could probably also get away with coconut flour. I just haven't officially tested that one. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm just going to mix up all of these dry ingredients just roughly in here. We could just sprinkle them over, but I'm going to mix them up in here first, and then we're going to cover the tofu in them. Okay, so approximately, and look, it's not an exact science, but we just want to get them coated to the point where there's a little bit of extra powder at the bottom of the bowl. And that means then that we've got that full absorption and we're not going to create basically like a gooey sort of muck with it. So we do want a little bit of extra down the bottom of the bowl. So about 1 tablespoon of tapioca starch, okay? About 2 tablespoons of, like I said, rice flour or sorghum flour. This is an organic brown rice flour. So it's nice because it's got kind of a drying ability, which is going to make a better texture for a crumb. Okay. And now, those of you that are veterans on this Cook With Me Live, you might already be training your brain to think to yourself, oh, if I like this tofu thing that she's doing, what am I going to do? And for next time, I should leave you guys to find the answer, but you would be doing a premix. Okay, so if you know that this is one of your favorite crumbs, you would make yourself up a nice big batch of this, put it back in the pantry, label it as crumb, and then you have this to use on anything you wish. Okay, so we've got onion powder, ginger powder, and some garlic powder to create the flavor. This is kind of taking the place of a long and lengthy marinating process. Okay, and it's also going to simplify the actual result and make sure we don't get gummy, gooey tofu cubes. Okay, so we'll give that just a little stir. We'll add a little bit of salt to this guy, because otherwise tofu is extremely bland and it's a blank canvas. So it's kind of good in one sense because you get to create whatever you want. But if you don't have the skills in doing that, then that's going to be frustrating, and I understand why people don't enjoy it. So create this little bit of crumb. We're going to sprinkle it onto the tofu. Okay, and here we go. You ready? This is the fun bit. Give it a little shake, get used to the weight of the bowl, and then flip. You don't really have to. But we want to give this a chance now to sit so it can hopefully absorb a little bit more of that flour. It's going to depend on how firm of a tofu you got. And ideally we want it to have just time to sort of soak in and moisten those flours so they can really adhere to it and stay onto the tofu. Okay, so I don't know if you can really see that, but there is still flour down the bottom. That's okay, we do want that. Okay, in an ideal world we would let that sit now for a little bit longer, but in the case of today, just to show you how this goes, we're going to add our 1 tablespoon of liquid on top of that right now. So you can choose pretty much any liquid. I like to use a little bit of coconut cream because it gives a little bit of extra oomph and flavor. And yes, we only need a tablespoon. I know it seems like not enough to count, but we only need a tablespoon. And here we go again. Ready? Swirl, toss. Swirl, toss, or just toss. Okay, so that should have gathered the rest of that flour from the bottom of your bowl. And now you can kind of see that the crumb is nice and sticky. So we've got that stickiness again, and then we can finish it with some sesame seeds. All right. So if you've got white sesame or black sesame, they both look amazing. I'll leave that choice up to you. And go 2 of the white sesame, 1 of the black, just because we can. Same, but different. There we go. Julie, Mal's in the kitchen. Excellent. Yes, go Mal. That's awesome. And Julie, I'm sure you're being a very good support crew. Who's wearing the apron tonight? Good job. And Glenda's using chili. Go, Glenda. There we go. So we've got some nice black and white sesame coating on there. Okay, pretty easy, guys. I know it looks a little bit complicated on the recipe, but really it's super simple. So now from here, we need to get this on the frying pan, okay? Because it's gonna take a little bit of time to fully finish cooking. So let's get that preheated, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna finish with the veggies. Okay, and we've probably got nearly boiling water at this point. So now it kind of feels like you're going to be doing a lot of things at once, okay? So bear with me. I'm trying to show you the most efficient way to do this in real life, which means we have a few things going at the same time so that the meal is timed appropriately when we want to eat it, okay? So if this is all a little bit too much for you, just know that you can do this one step at a time. I'm just creating some space. Okay. Let's go back and get this onto the fry pan. All right, so a couple things happening here. We've got the frying pan heating. Okay, and once that's hot, I'm going to then put some very heat-safe cooking oil into there. This is a third press coconut oil. So sometimes it's called cooking oil, sometimes it's called deodorized, sometimes it's called refined coconut oil. But this is the one that's safe in a frying pan, okay? So I know it might take a little bit of effort to go and track that down, but this is the one that's not going to turn trans fat in the frying pan. It's those precious, nutritious actually elements from an extra virgin or a virgin coconut oil that are the ones that turn bad at high heat. So that's why we save the extra virgin and the virgin coconut oils, for your raw desserts, maybe kind of lower temperature baking in the oven, but mostly, definitely in the frying pan, we want to go the third pressed one. Okay. So as that's heating, we're going to, like I said, in this case, we're frying the tofu. And while that's happening, we can start the noodles. If you're comfortable to, otherwise you can do this in separate lots. But I can hear that mostly coming near to the boil, just about there now. Nothing's in the steamer yet, but we've got that happening, okay? So the only thing you have to be ready for is that these noodles are only going to take about 4 or 5 minutes on the boil. So you just kind of have to be conscious of that, and even though we're going to have this happening in the frying pan, we're going to take this out in about 4 or 5 minutes. If you think you might forget, just set a timer. It's a nice way to kind of practice and learn. Okay? So that's going to go in. Again, nothing complicated there. Even if you don't think you would be using the whole bag, like the whole amount, consider whether or not you can make enough for leftovers. Okay? It does actually expand a fair bit. 2 tools are going to be handy here. So if you have a pasta spoon and a slotted spoon, that's going to be handy because we're going to save this boiling water. Okay, we're going to save that, and we're going to put the carrot, the spiralized carrot, into that water after as well. And we're also going to then use that water to steam the veggies in. Okay, all right. So we've got that happening. We're going to come back to that in about 4 or 5 minutes. This pan is smelling hot. So let's get some, bear with me 1 second, some oil into the pan. Now, how much oil? Approximately a tablespoon, okay, into the pan. Let's get that going around. And keep in mind, even if it does sizzle like crazy when you start, because of the volume of stuff that we're going to be putting into the pan, it'll be okay. It'll, as long as we move it around a fair bit, it's not going to burn, and that'll actually cool the pan down when you put the food in. So we want to make sure all those edges are coated. There we go, and straight in. Okay, so not too hot. So now this is a little bit of a back and forth process because we want to be able to, I guess, fry them off without burning them. And I personally like a little bit of a drier, crustier edge to the tofu because it's going to stay, well, depending on the tofu that you found, it's going to stay fairly nice and moist on the inside. So it's nice to kind of give it that extra little bit of crust on the outside. Okay, so this process is going to take probably about 10, maybe 15 minutes. Probably better if you have it take a little bit longer so that you can have it at a lower temperature and do more of that drying out rather than potentially burning the sesame seeds and things on top. Okay, so we'll just kind of start it out high and then we'll just toss it every now and then. You can see that our noodles are already softening up. And I'm just keeping it on a rumbling boil with the lid off, because otherwise it can tend to froth over. Okay, so I am definitely ahead of the game here with the noodles because we don't have any of our veggies cut up. So let's quickly go back to that and get some veggies started so that we can get them into the steamer, basically. Okay. So the first thing we're going to start out with are the carrots. And if you're not already used to using a spiralizer, then that's okay. You can use a julienne tool, or you can cut them any way you wish. But this was just a little bit more fun, to add a little bit more noodly, I guess, feel to the dish, that I wanted to do them with a spiralizer. So in order to fit these guys into my machine here, I'm going to probably have to cut them in half. Give myself a flat edge on both sides. Then we're going to plug it in. I'll do it sideways here so you can kind of see this happening. Plug it into the machine. There we go. And now we go like crazy. So it really helps to have a fat carrot so that you don't lose it all to the center core. There we go. Okay. And at this point, you might just want to give your tofu a little toss. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly toss it. You don't have to bother coming over. Have a seat. We'll get to that eventually. So we just want to toss it. Okay, so we're just going to do that a few times until we have nice toasted tofu. Hopefully not burnt tofu. So see how quick that was with the spiralizer? This is kind of what I mean by having the right tool for the job. Okay, so we're going to do maybe one more, and then we can put this straight into the hot water when the pasta's done cooking. This one may not behave for me. It's a little bit gnarly. Let's see how we go. I'll be surprised if this one's going to work. Let's see. Hang in there. There we go. How cool is that? Instant carrot noodles. I just think it's the best kitchen utensil to have. It just makes food fun. It makes you actually want to eat them. And not only that, it gives you this kind of cool little thing to play with after. Don't waste it. Just cut them up and eat it. That's the sweetest part of the carrot, by the way, the center. Okay, so we've got our little carrot noodles here. Now they're kind of epic, so you probably want to chop them a couple of times, but I would probably recommend chopping them after we cook them. Otherwise it's going to be actually harder to get all those little bits out of the boiling water. Okay, so we're going to cut them after we cook them. So let's just grab a transport bowl. Okay. Oh, they're just so beautiful. I just would love to eat carrot all day like that. Just, I don't know. Instead of pasta, there's another option. And our noodles should be done. So come on back. We'll work with that. We'll give the tofu a toss. Okay, so we want browning, not burning. And that's how you have to maybe adjust the heat of your pan to let the browning happen without the burning. Okay, and it might take a little bit of getting used to. You might not get it exactly right the first time, but you can just sort of, I guess, pay attention as you do it and you'll get the hang of it. Okay, that is probably sufficiently cooked for me now, but I'm going to actually leave it on a lower heat, maybe 4, maybe 3, just to continue sort of drying it out. And then you can test the pasta to see if it's done. So let's grab one little piece. So it has a slightly different texture to a normal piece of spaghetti. That's definitely done. It still might taste a little bit chewy, but it's definitely easy to chew. So I guess that's the little difference you'll just have to get used to with practice. Okay? So because we just want to save our efforts and use the same boiling water to not have to do this again, I'm just going to take the noodles out of the boiling water with the slotted spoon. Now you might have actually a strainer, like a sieve, that you could just scoop into that and use that instead. Okay, but there's our nice, that's pretty much all in one hit actually. Yeah, that's cool. They all stuck together. That doesn't normally happen. You might have to go in a few times. Okay, And then the carrots only need about 30 seconds. So we're going to stay here with the carrots. And again, I'm a little bit ahead of myself. Normally I'd like to have all the other vegetables cut up before I do this, because this is probably going to go a little bit cold now that I don't have the other veggies cut up. Okay, but this does not need much at all. You can see how much just the cold carrots cooled off the boiling water. It was rumble boiling, and now it's we've cooled it off significantly, but only about 30 seconds. It probably doesn't even need this. It's only if it's a really kind of cool winter's day and you want to warm up the noodles a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to call that good. Take that out. We're not trying to make it so they're completely limp here. Okay, that's a big key. I think too many times we overcook things. So let's do that. Taking all those carrot bits out. Okay. And then I'll leave the lid on this bowl to keep some of that heat in. And let's bring over the steaming basket so we can put all the veggies in as we cut it up. These are now on very low temperature, and we're going to leave them to do their thing. Okay. Carrots done. Last couple of veggies. Again, you'd be surprised how quickly this comes together. And you know what? As you hear me say a lot, the recipe's just a guide. So whatever vegetables you love or have on hand. The reason why I guess I specify vegetables is because it tends to work well with these ones. But I also would love to hopefully help you expand your repertoire when it comes to your vegetable variety in your diet. So maybe just because I've written something in there, it might mean that you might give it a try. And then hopefully we're expanding your vocabulary of foods in your diet. Okay, so just some approximately, I guess, thin slices of capsicum, if you're having capsicum. And again, the shape here is not super critical. The main difference that will change how you cut it will come down to whether or not you like capsicum, or whether it's kind of just a medium-like for you. So the more you like something, the bigger piece you can cut it into, because it's okay to bite into a whole piece of it and then that's all you taste, right? But if it's something that's not your favorite, or it's something that you're trying to get the kids to like, or an adult child to like, then you might want to cut it a little bit thinner, basically, okay? Now I'm going to set that one aside. We want to put the toughest vegetable down first. If not, do this in 2 lots, okay? Now, the reason why I've chosen these specific vegetables is because they all cook at pretty much the same rate. So you're not going to be caught with one that's completely raw while the others are overcooked. Okay, so I'm just going to take off the very tip of the broccoli that's kind of a little bit off, but not much more than that. There's a lot of nutrition in the stem as well, so please do not discard that. We're going to cook with those pieces as well. Okay, some nice thin pieces on the stem. And I'm just going to cut straight up into the floret, basically, into the crowns. And that way then the outer pieces kind of peel off naturally. So we get the little mini florets out there. Okay. These are going to be your toughest things to cook. So we're going to put them down first in the steamer. All right. And then we can continue that process with the pieces that are not quite broken up yet. So I'm going to continue to cut into the crown until we start getting the outer ones peel away. And if you like much smaller pieces of broccoli, then you can continue to do that on these guys as well until they break up nicely. The difference between doing it this way and just cutting through them, I'll show you. If you just cut through the broccoli, look how much kind of waste you get in all these little crumbly bits. And it's just not as visually appealing to see it chopped through the floret. So it's minor details, guys. Not critical. If you're in a pinch for time, just chop through the entire thing. That's fine. It doesn't take any more time to do it this way, and it might mean that someone will be a little bit more inclined to try a baby tree rather than a broken crumb. Okay, and it is all coming down to language too. So if the kids aren't that into broccoli, they become green trees, or however else they like to, I guess, get excited about the food. There we go. So it kind of naturally separates those florets for you. And we could do a little handful of green beans because they're delicious at the moment. Gotta eat them while they're fresh. Don't buy them and then let them sit in the fridge until they get all limp and wobbly and I guess full of blemishes. Okay, so let's eat them while they're fresh. So how I like to do this is just line them all up. I kind of push the beans into the knife, into the blade, to kind of get all those tips lined up. And then I'm going to take off the least amount possible. Then I just have a little inspection to see if I've missed any of these knobby bits. I did miss one. Chop that guy off. I see so many people practically chop a third of the bean off on both ends because they don't want to, heaven forbid, get a knobby bit in there. Okay, so we're just going to push them all up against the edge of the knife and then just take the edge off. Okay, you can check it and see if you missed any. No, we're all good. It's only the one end of the bean that has to come off, by the way. You don't have to take that end off. You only need the knobby bit at the top of the bean. So when you harvest it, they're going to be hanging on the plant like that with the knobby bit on here. So when you snap that bit off, that's the tough one. This one can stay on. Okay, so we might do thirds, whatever you're feeling. Let's put that in. And I think we'll put the onion in there too. Why not? Now this is probably getting a little bit full for a steamer. So ideally I would have done this in 2 different steaming sessions, if you will. Okay, because that's going to overload the steamer. So because I've already put those other ones in, I'm going to just kind of put a couple more bits in here and I'll steam these ones separately. Okay. Now I didn't have any sprouts. I do have some bok choy. Actually this is pak choy, sorry. So the green stem one is pak choy, the white stem one is bok choy. And everyone jokes around that I always use the example when I'm talking about waste in people's kitchens, that it's the bok choy that goes to waste up the back of the fridge. And you wonder why I always use that example. It's probably because that's what I tend to find goes to waste at the back of my fridge. But it's a delicious vegetable. It's very neutral in flavor. Okay. And this one definitely doesn't need very long to cook at all. So I'm going to put that in with the other one when we steam it. Let's get that on the boil straight away so we can get eating. Okay, so we've still got our water boiling there, so I'm just going to put this on, and then we do need the lid for that. Okay, so if you want, you can cover that up with something else to not lose that same amount of heat. And this is going to have to boil for, depending on how much we've filled it, probably about 3, 4, maybe 5 minutes, okay, depending on how much of a rumble boil you have in there. But I would recommend you stop it from cooking before you actually think they're fully done, because we want to stop it when it gets to its brightest green. Well, with broccoli, with any of the greens, you want to stop it when you see it get really bright. Okay. Now, if you're having this little issue of a bit of a, I guess, an overspill of this, it's only because we had the starches of the pasta in that water, and it just indicates that we don't have a very good seal on the steamer. But it shouldn't do too much. It should kind of tame down, unless you physically have too much water still left in the pot. Okay, so we're gonna let that steam away while we get the rest of the meal kind of prepared. And I just quickly want to show you, so these are done now. Okay, so that's just a nice little bit of browning on the edges. We've got a nice crumb happening. The sesame seeds are sticking to the tofu, which is what we're after. Okay, and it's still quite nice and soft and squishy, which is good, but it's got that nice crust on the outside. Okay, so that's kind of the goal that we're after here. So that could get transferred out, but we can start to plate up while those veggies finish boiling. So the trick here is I've used too small of a bowl, so it's going to be hard to toss this. Okay, but for the sake of mixing it, let's put a cut through it. Okay, might need a fork here. Let's do a cut through it 3 times. Just so it's a bit easier to work with and we don't end up with noodles absolutely everywhere. There we go. I just think that's beautiful. Look at the colors. How are you guys going? I haven't really been asking you lots of questions. Do you guys have questions? Is this brand new to you or is this old news? Tell me what you're thinking. I want to hear it. Okay? And in terms of plating this up, however you please. I'm just going to grab a big plate. You could use a bowl, whatever you feel. I like to eat it with chopsticks though. and know that your sauce being unthickened or not thickened is possibly going to go everywhere. So make sure you've got a bit of depth to your plate. Okay, let's get a bit of orange in there. There we go. Ready for our veggies. Might as well put some cubes on it straight away. Do you want to come on back again? And I do like to do the veggies last because they are the ones that, well, I'm sure everyone's different, but they're the thing that I think tastes the best when it's freshly out of the steamer. That's my most important. These things can go a little bit cold if you wish, but definitely you want to have the veggies nice and warm. Okay, so put that aside. We've got our sauce ready to go. And then, like I said, we've got enough heat in the dish. I don't think we really need to heat the sauce. That's ready. Okay. Now, if you check on these, keep in mind you're going to be letting out all the steam. So try to wait until you can really see that brightness in the broccoli happen. If you feel like you've accidentally overcooked the veggies, then I guess to stop them from cooking further, you've got to run them under cold water, but then you're going to end up with cold veggies. So you kind of want to really catch it before they overcook. So I'm just going to grab the tongs and we'll test how we're going here. So I don't know if you can see that in the camera, but they're quite a bright color now. They're not fully cooked yet because the steam hasn't really been reaching up to them. So we might just want to give it a quick little toss. Okay, I have probably overloaded this steamer, so it would have been better to put less in, and that way then the steam can circulate. So let's get that steaming a little bit more. We are very close. Okay, so that's pretty much, I guess, as simple as this is. Now think about the different ways that you can apply this to different meals. So we've just created a sauce, but that sauce can go on anything. So if you didn't want noodles, you could have done rice or buckwheat or, you know, cooked some millet, like, I mean, any type of base in that sense. Or you could have just had zoodles and the canoodles, as in the carrot noodles, right? So you could just do that as your base. With that same sauce, again, use it for other things. So if you have leftovers in the fridge, I just find it handy to put on anything savory that needs a little bit of a zhuzh. That could be a bit of breakfast soup. So those of you that have started doing the breakfast soup of a couple cook with me's ago, then maybe you just put a little bit of that in, not so that it's overpowering the flavor, but just a little bit to add flavor to the rest of the soup. Okay, so there's so many different uses that you can do. Just get creative and have a think about what other things could I possibly use, and it's going to save you time, right? All right, let's turn this guy off for now. Grab out our veggies. Okay, and if we notice that now these are really definitely cooked and we don't want them to cook anymore, then we need to take this off the heat, okay, because they're going to steam and cook very quickly from this point onwards. So if you really want to stop them from cooking, we want to transfer them out of the hot steamer basket as well. And then that's ready now for the rest of our veggies on the chopping board. Okay, so we'll bring over our sauce, we'll finish the garnish, and time for dinner. Is everyone up to this point? Noodles look great, Mandy, awesome. Glenda's onto the chili. So let's put a little bit of sauce over this. Let it soak through. Yeah. And now, if you want to garnish this with a little bit of toasted peanuts, toasted cashews, even just some more sesame seeds on top can be beautiful. I've got some peanuts, I believe. Just a couple left over. Nice little bit of extra crunch. There we go. So there we have it, guys. Canoodles and cubes. I hope that from this you were able to see that it's, although it looks like a lot of ingredients on there, and I know there's a little bit of a mess, ideally now you've got a meal potentially for another couple of days, or it doesn't necessarily freeze well, the sauce would, okay? Or at least you've learned the concepts on how to do this in so many different ways. I mean, you can change up the vegetables in a bazillion different formats. You could be using all different types of bases, different types of flavors in the sauce. The sky's the limit when it comes to savory dishes, and I hope you guys have been able to see that tonight. So thank you for being on Cook With Me Live, and I guess we'll see you next time.